You cannot make this up, as we have a brutal update on Patrik Laine that puts the rest of the Montreal Canadiens season into a bit of a question, with his cap hit coming off the books at the end of the season and this new injury update having him out long term. It largely affects the Montreal Canadiens' plans heading into the trade deadline and heading into their plans for next season and beyond. We have to break down what happened to Patrik Laine and how it impacts how Montreal will approach the rest of the season, all coming up right now. And we're going to start here. A little bit of a medical update. Now, look, we know Patrik Laine, he's been out searching second opinions, third opinions. We didn't really know what it was. We heard lower body injury. I think a lot of us assumed it was going to be his knee, maybe that nagging knee or something of the like, but no, the actual update is that is a core injury. It's a sports hernia, and he just had a procedure by Dr. Mark Zoland at Lenox Hill Hospital in New York, and he'll be out from 3 to 4 months. So, right off the bat, absolutely devastating news. And I know that it's easy to crap on Patrik Laine for not having the impact that we would have wanted him to have, but so many of his injuries have been out of his control, right? These knee injuries and so much that he went through over the past few years, even before getting to Montreal, and now a sports hernia, something that you really can't play through if anyone's ever had one before. It's rough. It's really rough. And 1 point in 5 games this season, obviously it doesn't jump off the page, but all that we want is for Patrik Laine to have a healthy bit of a season, right? It's so brutal that it's, again, another injury that's just random. It's bad luck. And I find it so sad, so brutal to see this happen to him, but we have to look at how this impacts now the Montreal Canadiens. Now, right away, I'm sure some of you are already saying, like, well, without Patrik Laine, Montreal has won a few games. They've looked great without Laine. Some articles are even out there saying they look better without Laine, and to some extent, I can understand that. Patrik Laine's 5v5 impact has not been very good. You can see the JFresh card here posted today with the news of his surgery. 24th percentile in even strength offense, 16th percentile in even strength defense. But you can see their 48th percentile in goals. This is over the last 3 seasons, weighted average. 97th percentile in finishing, 93rd percentile in drawing penalties. That's something he's gotten really good at. Overall, 85th percentile in projected wins above replacement, which is actually insanely high. Maybe not $8.7 million worth, but Patrik Laine over the last few years has still proven to be an impactful player to teams. And so it does hurt the Montreal Canadiens to not have a guy that scored 20 goals last year, like 14 of them on the power play. So as we look towards the future of Montreal, let's just look at the power play units. This here from Daily Faceoff, but these are the units that we've ran recently, right? And there's been a lot of talk about fixing the Habs power play because we are not good. We are tied for 22nd in the entire NHL in terms of power play percentage at 18.5%. And a lot of us were hoping, hey, once Patrik Laine gets back, maybe we get these units sorted out a bit. Maybe that percentage will go up. And now with him out 3 to 4 months, we don't have as many clear weapons on the power play. Like, yes, obviously that power play one with Ivan Demidov, Nick Suzuki, Juraj Slafkovsky, Cole Caufield, and Lane Hutson looked amazing, not only last playoffs, but in the one power play that we got against Edmonton. Don't bring me back down into those depths of that game, but they looked good, right? They were creating chances, and I think they will continue to create chances, and I think it'll stay like this on the first power play. But Patrik Laine, we saw when he was with Lane Hutson, those two guys worked so well together in terms of getting some power play goals. That hat trick that we played in the intro versus Buffalo last year was so unbelievable. This one here, again, just these absolutely lethal. The goalie's in position. It doesn't matter. This second goal, another beautiful shot. And the third one, of course, ending it all off there. Patrik Laine has been incredibly impactful. So now that weapon is gone, right? A team that is tied for 22nd in power play percentage, you're losing one of your biggest weapons. And this year, no, obviously he has not been that weapon, but I think that's also in large part due to the fact that the second unit of the power play, which is what Laine has been on, has barely gotten any time on ice, because our first unit throughout this whole season so far, this 9-game sample, has been able to keep possession for a minute and a half straight. So the second unit, at most, they're getting like 45 seconds to go in and set up. And if you turn the puck over once trying to get into the zone, you're just not going to get there. So that is one impact of this news, right? And again, 3 to 4 months is a while, so you're going to have to figure out your power play without Laine, who was the most lethal power play goal scorer in the league last year on a per game basis. That's not an exaggeration. Power play goals per game of people who scored like at least, I think, one is Patrik Laine, right? That was the number one in the NHL. He was fourth in power play goals in like 30 fewer games than everyone else. But it's not only that. I got to get into the very important aspect of this. And we all know Patrik Laine is an expiring contract, meaning his contract's done at the end of the year, and he's an unrestricted free agent and can sign anywhere. Now, there have been lots of talks about how Montreal may want to extend him. Same thing with Mike Matheson, because his contract's up too. But with Laine being due some money, you start to wonder, right? Like, every injury, every little bit of news that we get about Patrik Laine that is negative impacts his negotiations for not only what's going to happen this summer, how much money he'll be able to get, but the talks with the Montreal Canadiens, because it wouldn't shock me if Montreal still wanted to keep him around at a very low price point. However, at this point, you could argue he's been played out of the lineup. Like, you could argue that Joe Veleno has had better impact 5v5, so he's a better option. Though again, Laine's power play potential has not been unleashed this year. I feel like some people forget how good it was last year, but I digress. His money coming off the books is a very interesting negotiation point for Montreal. And then there's the aspect of the trade deadline. There have been a lot of people saying at this point, what if we can just trade Laine, get some kind of value back? We gave up Jordan Harris and got a second-round pick in this Laine trade. What if we could recoup some kind of draft capital from another team for Patrik Laine to just say, look, that's it. We'll retain half of his contract and go and get maybe a rental player for this playoff push and replace that rental player next year with one of our young guys like Xhekaj or something. Maybe. But the thing is, the trade deadline this year is on March 6th. So let's just do some quick math, right? This is getting recorded October 25th. So we do the math. 3 months, November, December, January 25th. 4 months, February 25th. And there is the Olympic break in there. There is a real possibility that Patrik Laine doesn't play before this trade deadline. I still think he probably will. The initial reports before the Habs came out, they said 2 to 3 months. The Habs came out and said 3 to 4. So I would assume we're talking probably closer to the 3-month range, but it all depends on the person and the rehab and all this stuff. So, but there's a real world where he plays only a handful of games or maybe 0 games in between now and the trade deadline because of the Olympic break and stuff. And if that's the case, he's going to be incredibly difficult to trade, but also this affects how Montreal will go about going to get players, right? So right now you can put him on IR, but he's not going to be eligible for this long-term IR to open up even more cap space for the Montreal Canadiens, and he's going to come right back to the team. He'll almost be like a trade deadline acquisition, if that makes sense, right? He'll be coming healthy right around as we're leading up to the trade deadline and that Olympic break. So that is another interesting aspect, right? Any moves you make around the trade deadline, like we were talking the other day about how Dave Pagnotta, the fourth period, said, look, we're talking about probably some complementary pieces coming into Montreal at some point this season. Again, we made a move like that last year in December with the acquisition of Alexandre Carrier, who has been an amazing trade so far. So something else similar to that could be the case to maybe bolster our power play or maybe try and get someone to bolster that forward core with Laine's absence. But you got to remember that he is coming back, and is he the kind of guy you want to scratch? Is he going to be that 13th forward? I don't know, right? So there's so many different avenues that you can go with this news and how it impacts the Montreal Canadiens, and I'm not sure. I think this is a really interesting spot to be in, but like, you can't make this up, man. I just wish for health. Nothing but health for Patrik Laine. I hope he can come back and be an impactful player, whether it's in Montreal or not. I just want everyone to share their positive vibes with Patrik Laine, and I know there's going to be a lot of comments saying, oh, that's it, he's done. I am always hopeful. Maybe sometimes to a fault, but it's through no fault of his own he gets these injuries. He has done everything he can. He's been great in the city of Montreal, great to the fans, great to everyone around him. They were nominated, him and his wife were nominated for an award recently for giving back. Like, he does everything so well off the ice. It's just sometimes his 5v5 play on the ice annoys some people. And sometimes I just feel like, look, it's a human, man. At the end of the day, I really want him to succeed. So, hoping for the best for Patrik Laine. Leave me your thoughts on everything down below. That'll do it for this episode of Habs Digest. If you enjoyed, subscribe to the channel. We're pushing 25,000. Thank you so much for tuning in every single day. I've been your host, Josh Gosse, and I'll catch you in the next one.